The title of this story is The Price of Privilege, a tale of deception and redemption in Boston's elite. Welcome, friends, to a tale of privilege, deception, and redemption in the glittering world of Boston's elite. Imagine waking up in a hospital bed, unable to move, only to overhear your own wife plotting your demise. A desperate doctor, drowning in debt, and a woman who isn't who she claims to be. This is a story of love lost, love rediscovered, and the power of second chances. Stay with us as we unravel the shocking story of Benjamin Whitman, a man who had it all, until he found out the price of his privilege. The pristine walls of Massachusetts General Hospital's VIP wing seemed to mock Benjamin Whitman as he lay helpless in his hospital bed, trapped in a body that refused to move. Through the fog of semi-consciousness, he could only move his eyes, tracking the movement of two figures near his bed. His wife, Savannah, stood beside Dr. Alexander Foster, speaking in hushed tones. Even in this dire situation, she hadn't forgotten her image. Her designer dress hugged her curves perfectly, her blonde hair styled immaculately. "Dr. Foster," Savannah's voice dripped with honey-coated venom. "I can see you're a man of discerning taste. Surely we can come to an arrangement about my husband's care?" Ben fought against the heaviness of his eyelids, straining to hear every word while maintaining the appearance of unconsciousness. His heart monitor beeped steadily, masking the racing of his pulse as he listened. "Mrs. Whitman," Dr. Foster's voice wavered slightly. "I'm not sure what you're implying, but your husband's condition—" "Oh, please." Savannah cut him off with a dismissive wave of her manicured hand. She reached into her designer bag, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "Let's not pretend. I know about your little gambling problem at the Encore Casino. Quite a substantial debt you've accumulated." The doctor's sharp intake of breath was audible even from Ben's bed. "Where did you get that?" "Does it matter?" Savannah's stilettos clicked on the hospital floor as she moved closer. "What matters is that I now own your debt, and I'm willing to make it disappear if you ensure my dear husband never leaves this hospital." Ben felt his blood run cold. He wanted to scream, to jump up and confront them, but his body remained frustratingly immobile. The appendicitis that had brought him here now seemed like a cruel twist of fate. "You can't be serious," Foster whispered, but Ben could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "I took an oath." "An oath won't pay off $500,000 in gambling debts." Savannah's voice hardened. "And I'm sure the medical board would be very interested in learning about your extracurricular activities. Your choice, doctor. Help me or lose everything you've worked for." The silence that followed was deafening. Ben could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears as he waited for Foster's response. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Savannah's laugh was like ice crackling. "Nothing too obvious. A small adjustment to his medication, perhaps. An overlooked complication. You're the doctor. I'm sure you can be creative." "I'll need time to think about this," Foster mumbled. "You have until tomorrow morning." Savannah's voice was still wrapped in silk. "Don't disappoint me, doctor." The click of her heels faded as she left the room, leaving behind the scent of her expensive perfume and the weight of her deadly proposition. Ben lay there, his mind racing despite his paralyzed body. His wife wanted him dead, and his doctor might be willing to help her achieve that goal. As consciousness began to slip away again, one thought crystallized in his mind. He needed to find a way to survive, or his hospital room would become his tomb. The Whitman estate in Wellesley stood as a monument to old money and even older expectations. Young Benjamin had grown up within its perfectly manicured hedges and behind its imposing iron gates, learning the weight of the family name before he could even write it. "A Whitman man builds upon his inheritance, Benjamin. He doesn't merely spend it." His father's voice echoed through the mahogany-paneled study as he lectured his teenage son. "Your grandfather started with a single office on State Street. I've turned it into one of Boston's premier investment firms. What will you add to this legacy?" Ben stared at his father's Harvard diploma hanging on the wall, identical to the one that would eventually hang beside it. There had never been any question about where he would attend college. The Whitman men had worn crimson for 3 generations. "I understand, Father," young Ben replied, his prep school uniform perfectly pressed, his posture impeccable. "I won't disappoint you." Those words followed him through Harvard, where he graduated summa cum laude, and across the Atlantic to Oxford. While other students partied, he studied. While they dated, he networked. The Whitman name opened doors, but Ben was determined to prove he deserved to walk through them. His father had wanted him to stay in London, where his Oxford connections could be leveraged for global opportunities. But Ben had refused. "Boston is home, Father. I can build something here, something of my own." His father's laugh had been sharp. "Your own? Everything you are is built on this family's foundation. Don't forget that." And Ben hadn't forgotten. By 30, he was making partner-level decisions at the firm, his instincts proving as sharp as his father's. "You've done well," Harrison admitted one evening, swirling aged scotch in a crystal tumbler. "But a man needs more than success. He needs a legacy, a family." Ben had protested. "I'm focused on my career right now." But Harrison Whitman had been firm. "You're 30, Benjamin. It's time. Find someone suitable, someone who understands our world, our responsibilities. You have 2 months." It was an ultimatum Ben couldn't escape, and that's when he met Savannah. The Whole Foods on Cambridge Street was the last place Ben expected to find love. He had stopped in for a quick lunch between meetings, his mind still churning over his father's marriage ultimatum. Then fate, dressed in a cashmere sweater and pearls, literally ran into him. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," Savannah exclaimed as their shoulders collided, her organic green smoothie splashing across his custom-tailored suit. "No, please, it was my fault," Ben found himself saying, though it clearly wasn't. He looked up from his ruined jacket into the most captivating blue eyes he'd ever seen. That lunch turned into dinner at L'Espalier, where Savannah charmed him with stories of her globe-trotting childhood. She was eloquent, cultured, and seemed to anticipate his every thought. She fit seamlessly into his world as if she had been born to it. Even his father approved, which was nothing short of a miracle. "She understands our world," Harrison had nodded. "Good breeding shows." Their wedding was the event of the season. Boston Common magazine called it the social affair of the year. Savannah was radiant in custom Vera Wang, floating down the aisle like an angel. "I still can't believe you're mine," Ben had whispered during their first dance. "Forever," Savannah had promised, her eyes shining with what he thought were tears of joy. Now lying in his hospital bed, Ben realized how carefully orchestrated it had all been. Every response, every gesture, every seeming coincidence. Savannah had played him like a virtuoso. He had been so eager to fulfill his father's expectations, so relieved to find someone who fit the role perfectly, that he had missed all the warning signs. Some Harvard education, he thought bitterly, all that privilege, and I still couldn't spot a con artist in Chanel.